We have some new numbers on the increase in billionaires during the pandemic and the depression, and it's not pretty. So this is originally from the Washington Post. They say, the number of newly minted and reissued billionaires soared last year, Forbes reported Tuesday in its annual ranking, an accumulation of personal wealth that stands in sharp contrast with the widespread economic struggles unleashed by the pandemic. The number of billionaires on Forbes' 35th annual rankings swelled by 660 to 2,755, a roughly 30% jump from a year ago, and 493 of them are first-timers. 7 out of 8 of them are richer than they were before the pandemic. Forbes calculated net worth by using stock prices and exchange rates from March 5th. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, with an estimated fortune of $177 billion, topped the list for the 4th year running. Tesla chief executive Elon Musk came in number 2 at $151 billion. The shares of both companies soared last year, largely contributing to both men's net worths and causing them to toggle for the richest man title on various lists. Now, there's another article. I think we probably covered this previously, but I needed to refresh my memory on this, and I looked it up. Apparently, by 2026, which is very soon, not very far away now, is it? By that year, it is very likely somebody, and they actually point out Jeff Bezos in the article specifically, will be a trillionaire. A trillionaire. Trillionaire. Let that sink in. So I'll give you some more information. They point out in the article, quote, as a class, billionaires added about $8 trillion to their total net worth from last year, totaling $13.1 trillion. Wow. The United States has the most billionaires, 724 of them, extending a rapid rise in wealth that has not happened since the Rockefellers and the Carnegies roughly a century ago. So, like the robber baron era, the Gilded Age. In the United States, the top 400 wealthiest Americans now own the equivalent of 18% of GDP in wealth. Twice as much as in 2010. Do you understand that? The 400 wealthiest Americans in 2010 own 9% of GDP, which is insane. 400 people with 9% of GDP. Now, it's double that. The 400 wealthiest people have 18% of GDP in wealth. 400 people, 18% of GDP in wealth. 400 people. A fraction of the top 1% have nearly 20% of GDP in wealth. I've gone over these numbers before, but this is very similar to what happened leading into the Great Depression with income level. So when the U.S. was relatively stable economically and we had the golden age of economic expansion in the post-World War II period, the top 1% would earn about 8 or 9% of the nation's income. Top 1% would earn 8 or 9% of the nation's income. Leading into the Great Depression, that number was the top 1% was earning about 23% of the nation's income. Way out of whack. Leading into the Great Recession, it was about the same. It was about 23% of the income going to the top 1%. Now they're telling us in terms of GDP. So this isn't necessarily income, this is in terms of GDP. But this is insane. Even since 2010, they've doubled their share of wealth. And at the same time this is happening, people are falling into poverty all over the country. You know, we've gone over it in detail, but even pre-COVID, about 78% of the country was living paycheck to paycheck. Half of workers were making $30,000 a year or less. Tens of millions of people don't have health insurance. At least 500,000 people are homeless in this country. And by the way, if they ever get rid of these protections, these COVID protections from evictions, that number is going to skyrocket. Foreclosures and evictions are going to go through the roof. There's another article that came out recently which pointed out that now Wall Street is basically buying up all these properties and then basically jacking up the prices. And we have an artificially inflated housing market at the moment. So do you understand that? They'll buy up the properties and they'll like outbid each other, these Wall Street firms, and then artificially inflating the housing market. And then they rent it out to people at exorbitant rates that they can't afford. Or if somebody wants to try to buy it, they charge them a ridiculous amount that they can't afford. And nobody has money. And we had a depression and a pandemic. We still have what is effectively a depression and a pandemic, and here we are. So Ask yourself this question. How can it be? How can it be? We have a pandemic and a depression, but the rich are getting way, way, way richer. Way richer. Is that acceptable? Is that fair? Is this because of merit? Are they just working harder than everybody else? No. And people are onto the trick now. They understand. Hey, this isn't a meritocracy. They didn't just work harder. Plenty of people who are good people who work really hard and try to provide for their families, they got the rug pulled out from underneath them with this pandemic and this depression. And now they're starting to understand how unfair the system is. So if you want to know who's really screwing you, it's not some poor brown or black person who has no money and no power. No. It's the billionaires, it's the corporations, and it's the fact that they bought and owned the government and rigged the policies against regular people. And that's what we have. Did you know that it was about a year or two ago, for the first time ever, billionaires paid an effectively lower tax rate than your average working person? An effective lower tax rate than your average working person. How insane is that? That's a regressive tax system. That's what that is. There was the Rand Corporation study, which I cite all the time now. $47 trillion was stolen by the 1% from the bottom 90% since the mid-1970s. If you just kept the pay ratio the same, then working people would all have $1,144 extra per month for their entire lives. If you had the same pay structure as the post-World War II period as you do today. So the bottom 90%, everybody in the bottom 90% would be $1,144 wealthier per month for their entire life. So the rich have stolen effectively $47 trillion from the bottom 90%. That's where we are. This is unsustainable. And we don't have basic social democracy to ameliorate these ills. We don't. We need it. We don't have it. We don't have universal health care. We don't have free college. We don't have paid vacation time by law. We don't have higher wages. Here we are. This is unsustainable. Look out.